was a honeydew. Yeah, that cat is high.
There's a lot of talk about how legal weed in the state of California could change everything from the sales of beer, wine, and spirits, cookies and chips, to what restaurants serve on the menu. Today on One-on-One, a conversation with Jerry Nickelsburg, director of the UCLA Anderson Forecast, an economist on weed, coming up.
This is Cornucopia.
Got no shoes upon his feet, man, he's high.
Hello, this is Jerry.
Hey, Jerry, this is Matt Levine. Now still a good time?
Now is a good time.
Perfect. So let's take a look at the legalization of weed in comparison with the end of prohibition. A big impetus for the end of prohibition was the tax revenues that would be raised through the renewed consumption and sale of beer, wine, and spirits. Can you talk about where you see that income potential for the state of California and some of the cities that may have local sales tax on these products?
I think in order to really understand the tax implications, we need to look elsewhere where this has happened. Comparisons have been made to taxes on the consumption of alcohol when prohibition ended, but the consumption patterns were quite different, and it was a different time in the United States as well. But in both cases, you had a substance that a large number of people were consuming, and it was illegal, and so it was not subject to sales tax or any other excise taxes. And with the legalization of marijuana, you can expect increased tax revenues because of that. Now, they're not going to be huge compared to the budget of the state of California, but they will be something. If you just look at cigarette and liquor taxes in the state's revenue, they're pretty small compared to personal income tax, other sales taxes, and for local governments, also property taxes. So it'll be an increment. It will be a nice increment, but it's not going to be a real game changer.
Interesting. Yeah, wasn't really aware of the relative small percentage in terms of the revenue gains.
Right. So, some people have looked at the value of cannabis that is currently being sold in California. And that's sold within the state, and there's some estimates on that. But that's what's sold illegally. So if it is illegal, it's going to bring a higher price. That's the price that compensates the grower and distributor for the risk that they're taking of legal jeopardy, and that goes away, and so the price will go down. And so the expectation should be that this will be fairly small in the scheme of things.
In terms of supply and demand, I know from personal purchase habits, what you can buy for $100 has changed dramatically. Maybe the next place to look at is sales of other packaged goods, notably wine and beer and spirits in a negative, and also snack food marketing around products towards stoners. Any comments?
When I looked at what happened in Colorado, I thought that you would see a shift in Colorado state tax revenues from liquor sales to marijuana sales, and you don't see that. So you see, and an interesting thing comes out of that data, and that is that you see a fairly strong growth over time of sales of marijuana. But the anecdotal evidence suggests that that's marijuana tourism that's going on.
Interesting.
And so it can generate a new industry, and I know that there has been formal and open discussion in Mendocino and also in Sonoma about marijuana tourism and having that as a new industry that would crop up in the state of California.
There's a lot of anecdotal discussion about restaurants where the overhead is huge and, increasingly restaurants backed by $1 million+ in investment money. Some of them aren't even lasting 6 or 12 months. So is there anything that you've seen or are aware of in terms of creating fine dining around a cannabis themed menu or nightclubs or current types of businesses morphing to include weed?
No, but, again, I think you can expect that to be relatively small. So there may be a lot of discussion about this amongst the high, upper scale restaurants in San Francisco. It's not going to make a huge difference. Restaurants have a short lifespan, and it's not a surprise that that's happening. I have no data to suggest this is or is not true, but it wouldn't be at all surprising if this made no difference whatsoever in that regard.
Yeah, restaurants have a short lifespan and stoners have a long and extensive imagination. So we'll see where that goes.
Another reminder, rate us on iTunes or wherever you listen. Sign up for our email list at cornucopia.show. And we need your stories, folks. We're launching a new segment in January called Grocery Hell. Inspired by my own true life nightmares as a wholesale grocery rep with a mediocre distributor. We want to hear from you, soccer moms, truck drivers, store managers, cashiers, sales reps, regional managers. Send us your nightmares to contact@cornucopia.show. Put Grocery Hell in the subject line, and we'll get back to you whether or not we feel your story really was grocery hell, or you just need to toughen up, drink some more coffee, and stop being so emo. Now back to our interview.
Anything on the liability side of this among manufacturers and retailers that you have any insights into?
No, I don't have any insights into that. I think it is worth pointing out, however, that even though marijuana can be purchased legally within the state of California, it cannot be legally taken across the state line. And purportedly, that which comes out of the Emerald Triangle in northwestern California is of high quality, and there's a market external to California for that. So you would expect that distribution channel and those underground farmers who are engaged in that are still going to be, because there'll still be the premium that they will earn that is a compensation for the legal liability that they're incurring. As far as distribution and the quality of processing, I think it comes under the same kind of category as any food or supplement or tobacco comes under within the state of California.
And any estimates on the value of that crop, and also whether or not, as goes California, so goes the nation, whether you're looking at emission standards?
Well, the entire West has gone to legalization of marijuana, but the Attorney General of the United States is increasing prosecution of marijuana growing and distribution and possession. So I don't think it's going to lead to an acceleration at the moment. In terms of the size of the market, if you simply take the size of the legal market in Colorado based on retail sales and adjust that for the fact that Colorado is a much smaller state than California, you get about a $5 billion market. A $5 billion industry in California is 0.2% of California's GDP. California's GDP is $2.5 trillion. So this is pretty small.
From what I'm gathering, it's not going to be like tomorrow we're going to be buying Philip Morris pre-rolled joints. That's the paranoia that I hear. Within 5 years, it's going to be all big players, and corporate weed is going to take over all the small operators, both on the farm, manufacturing of value-added products, and in retail.
Well, let's take what happened with the end of Prohibition. When Prohibition finally ended, the players who were best positioned to move alcohol, in particular beer, into a widespread community were the big brewers who had been able to survive Prohibition by making apple juice and some other things. And so you had Budweiser and Miller and Pabst and others really dominate the market until the new craft industry could finally get a foothold and start growing. And now we see the craft industry is maybe not quite large compared to these big distributors, but individuals who want to be entrepreneurs in the making of beer and wine and spirits, an opportunity to do so, and individuals who want to avail themselves of those products to do so as well. I think you can expect a similar thing to happen as marijuana becomes legal, not just in a few states, but nationwide, and moving it across borders is no longer illegal. So I think that's something that would be in the future. But the way in which this is unveiling, which is not what happened in Prohibition, is that you have states making it legal. California is a pretty big market, and that gives some room for larger corporations to move in, but many of the markets are much smaller. Oregon and Washington and Alaska and Colorado. And so we see a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of smaller businesses in this industry already.
And forecasting that distribution challenge to developing a sophisticated market infrastructure kind of didn't even occur to me, how that has some obvious limitations in terms of a more above-ground economy.
Right, exactly.
Conclude anything I might not have asked or brought up?
Well, we like to look at the impact on state revenues, whether or not there's substitution. We talked about that. There doesn't look like there's real substitution in Colorado. The development of a new industry, the implied tax revenues for the state, think that California is going to be somewhat comparable to Colorado, which in terms of a marijuana industry has been somewhat successful. It's only 0.4% of the California state budget. So that's going to be pretty small. And the number of jobs, our estimate for the number of jobs is that it'll generate about 24,000 new jobs. Now, you have to be a little bit careful there. Those might have been underground jobs, and now they're above ground, but 24,000 measured jobs. And in context, that's in an 18 million job economy. So also pretty small.
Got it.
But in Mendocino and Humboldt counties, could be a couple of percent of employment in the county. And if you add in the potential for tourism, it could be important for certain parts of California that have been economically depressed relative to the rest of California. Overall for the state, certainly for the Bay Area where you're located, this won't move the needle at all.
It's really fascinating to have you put it in perspective, particularly being in the little bubble of San Francisco and being someone who enjoys smoking weed, to kind of get us grounded in the big picture of things rather than our own smoky, haze-filled imagination.
Right. You have a different perspective.
Awesome. Well, Jerry Nickelsburg, director of the UCLA Anderson Forecast, adjunct professor at UCLA Anderson School of Management, without the R. Thank you for taking the time, and we'll look forward to seeing what happens and circling back in 2018 on this and some other subjects. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Anytime they give a toast to the man who brings the jive. Whenever you're feeling small, don't care for this life at all. Light up and get real tall. Here comes the man with the jive. Don't sit around moaning sigh and act like you're gonna die. Light up, baby, and get real high. Here comes the man.